Welcome to the 2024 Kiss My Asana Yogathon, and it's the kickoff. So one of the things, I'm so grateful you're all here, that we're turning this into a very successful Kiss My Asana this year. So thank you for all your help. I'm really excited about what's happening today and about what we're going to be able to show you. One of the things that is so abundantly clear as I was preparing for this kickoff is how this organization, more than I ever knew, is only here because of all of our stories and all of our talents. And that's going to become really apparent today. We are you, you are us. So that's the core idea here today. We got really lucky. Kevin Kling, I don't know if any of you know who Kevin Kling is. He's a world famous storyteller and author. He's also an amazing collaborator with Mind Body Solutions. And he's also an adaptive yoga student. He was not able to be with us live today in person because he's at an international storytelling convention in the mountains of Virginia, and it's called Songs of the Mountain or Sounds of the Mountain. So think about Kevin is up there in Virginia. We were able to record a quick little session with it. Kevin was part of he's been also, we used to do this thing and we'll probably do it again online called Body Mind Story, where we try to help facilitate all of people's stories about their experiences. So he's been with us for a long time. As you'll see, he lives with multiple disabilities and he won't say this, he has a lot of PTSD from his motorcycle accident, but also a lot of neuropathic pain. So he performs like 300 days a week. So he's a stunning human being, one of the true treasures. He's an icon in Minnesota for sure, but also worldwide. So he, of course, truly believes in our work. So without further ado, I asked him, this is the kind of thing, this is our dialogue. I said, Kevin, will you start off our Kiss My Asana kickoff? So could you do a blessing for us without it being a blessing? That was my mandate to him. And he said, yeah, no problem. Because the guy drinks Paradox. So here's the recording of him starting us off. Hey, Kevin, thanks so much for helping us start our Kiss My Asana kickoff today. You've been a long time collaborator with Mind Body Solutions, including being an adaptive yoga student. And I'm so grateful that you're willing to start us off with a couple of stories that help us launch this kickoff. Kevin.
All right. Well, I'm really honored. I'm a big fan of Mind Body, and yeah, the adaptive yoga program really changed my life. For those of you who don't know, my left arm, you can see now it's shorter than my right. I have 4 fingers on this side, no thumbs. So when I work with kids, and I say after the show, if you want a high five, you're out of luck, but we can high 4 all day. And my right arm is it doesn't move from a motorcycle accident I had 23 years ago. And so I even ask the kids, I say, hey, after the show, if you see that arm move during the show, tell me, I'll get really excited. And somebody always does. So I would like to start with a story about my right arm. I was in the hospital shortly after this motorcycle accident, and I would go down an elevator every day and go to the bottom floor, and I would try to walk a half a block. That's all the further I could make it. So, and I'd come back, and I'm in the elevator going down, and this kid gets on, and he's about 8 years old, and he's in the hospital because he hit his head on a fence post. He said, I hit my head and I had to get 8 stitches here. And he points to the back of his head, and I go, oh yeah? I go, I had to get stitches from here to here, down my arm, and down one leg to the floor. Well, the kid looks at me and says, yeah, but mine really hurt. Yeah. And I thought, yeah, you can never judge another man's pain. And you can't. You can't judge another man's pain. You also can't judge another person's sense of health. We all have a different version of what makes us healthy, what creates our best lives. So, one of the things I love about adaptive yoga is that it takes that into account. We all move in with what we bring to the room. We're all in the same room, but we aren't all in the same room. We're all bringing different things to the table. Um, but the key is, and this is in another story, it's a story about a girl named Alice. And every Sunday morning before church, Alice and her family would go out for breakfast. And they'd go to this restaurant, and the server would come, and her dad would order Alice a grapefruit and a piece of toast. Every Sunday that happened. Well, one Sunday, the server arrives, and before the dad can speak, Alice jumps in and says, I want eggs and a banana. Well, the dad starts laughing and laughing. No, no, no. He said, no. Alice will have her grapefruit and a piece of toast. Well, the server leaves, and she comes back a little while later, and she sets down eggs and a banana. And Alice starts laughing and laughing and laughing. And her dad goes, Alice, what's so funny? And Alice says, that server, she thinks I'm real. Alice was seen, maybe for the first time in her life. She was seen, she was recognized, and the thrill of that. And a lot of times in the world of disability, we stop being seen, and to be seen, to be recognized. And that goes into with what is health to us? What is the trajectory forward? It's also when we're seen, we belong. When you see someone, you recognize them. And I think recognize is one of the biggest words. I think of words like beauty and truth have kind of a shelf life, but recognition really sticks, because when I'm helping you, I'm really helping myself. So I'm a proponent of recognition. And one of my favorite next story goes along with that. And it's about a girl named Alice, and or a girl that was in a class that we had. Uh, and I, high five, and she came up high four, and it was this little girl, and she comes up, and I go, high four. No, she says high two, two fingers. She had two fingers on one hand. So we high two, and when we're done, I asked her teacher, I said, how's that little girl doing in class? Because, she's one of my people, and I want to make sure she's doing all right. And her teacher says, okay, let me tell you. She goes, okay, it was November. And she says, we're doing this project where we make a turkey by putting our hand down on a piece of paper. A lot of us did this, especially here in the United States. You put your hand on a piece of paper, you trace around the fingers, and those are the feathers. And then the thumb becomes the head, and you put a beak on the thumb and a little gobbler hanging down, and there's your turkey. Well, the teacher said, put your other hand down, trace around that, and you'll have two turkeys facing each other. So the kids did their drawings, and they turned them all in, and the teacher's going through the drawings. Well, she comes to that little girl's drawing, and there's one turkey with all of its feathers, but then there's another turkey with just two feathers. And the teacher thinks, I wonder if that's going to embarrass her if I put that up on the wall. So then she gets a good idea. She tells the little girl, you know, if you want to redo your drawing and use the same hand for both turkeys, that'd be all right. So the little girl redid her drawing, two turkeys with two feathers on each side. And I loved that. But what I loved even more was that teacher. She took all those drawings in the class and put them up on the wall. And so I looked up on the wall, and there's this huge flock of turkeys with all their feathers. But right in the middle were these two turkeys with two feathers each. I thought, oh man, there she was. There was that little girl. Not only was she there represented as who she was, but she was in a flock. She was surrounded by her community. And that is such a huge thing, to be in a community, to be part of a community, to be a provider of a community, and to belong. Belonging is one of my favorite words, because it's two words, right? It's being and longing. Being somewhere, but longing to be somewhere else. We need that. We need a nest, and we need vastness. We need safety, and we need risk. It's what to be a human, that's what you need. Again, fitting in with adaptive yoga. I have one final story, And this is the one I really think of, especially when I think of mind body, of what it gave me and what it reminds me of constantly. I just had my motorcycle accident, and I was in the Mayo Clinic, and I was in the Mayo Clinic with all these specialists that were, what can we do to get your arm back? What surgeries can we do? And I was waiting in the Mayo Clinic, and I was reminded of when I went to the Guthrie Theater when I was a young man, and I auditioned. It's our big flagship theater here in Minneapolis. And I auditioned, and the director, Liviu Chule, was from Romania. And he's like, what do you have next? What do you have next? And so I was doing everything I knew. I was jumping up, the sun will come out tomorrow, everything I could think of. And it went on for an hour and a half. I auditioned for an hour and a half. And I get done, and he rubs his chin and he says, you will never work here. And I went, oh, no. And he goes, but I can confidently say you will always work in the theater. I left on cloud nine. I was elated for not getting the job, but I knew he wasn't lying. I would work in the theater. So I'm sitting in this office, and I've got the neurologist, orthopedic, all these different surgeons telling me, we've done everything we can do to get your arm back. And we're sorry, but there's nothing more we can do. So I left the hospital, and I'm walking down the road, and I'm feeling I've got a lifted spirit. And I'm thinking, why is my spirit feeling lifted? I've just been given this news. And then I remembered Chule, and I remembered the Guthrie. And I knew why. I was now going to get to be the person I was supposed to be. I was done trying to go back and retrieve the old me. Now I was getting to live the life in this body with who I am. And that sense of freedom outweighed any loss that I had. And I think that's finally one of the biggest things I take from adaptive yoga. They they see me, who I am. They recognize who I am. And more than anything, they help me propel into the future. They give me ideas. They take me for exactly who I am and the new self I'm trying to grow into.
Kevin, I can't thank you enough for those stories. Um, especially the idea that we take what we get, it's kind of, we talk a lot about coming home. You have to come home in order to leave again. And at Mind Body Solutions, we hope we get a place where actually by being seen and being heard, we actually get to come home and launch into the rest of the world and go out and change it, which is a lot of what Kiss My Asana is trying to do, trying to get us to land and launch and tell the story. So Kevin, thank you so much for being part of Mind Body Solutions and helping us kick this off.
Thanks, Matt.
It's hard to follow that. I watched that like 3 or 4 times now, and I still get emotional because as the founder of Mind Body Solutions, we started in 2001. I have tried over and over again to try to capture the essence of what we do at Mind Body Solutions. And one of the things in watching this, just this again this morning, what Kevin did there, is that, and it's not just Kevin, the best way to tell the story of Mind Body Solutions is through all of your stories. Through, because I've tried to package it. The boards always said, find an elevator speech, find this, find that. And in fact, our elevator speeches are you and what you've done. And if you go back to what he's saying, I just want to highlight some of the themes that he said in each one of the stories. I can't know another one's pain. And he puts that in the mouth of an innocent child, right? Which makes it even more powerful. And that's one of the things that people, the idea of community that he's emphasized through the whole thing is really a big part. Mind Body Solutions has gone completely online, and we're trying to build an adaptive yoga community, which the money here from Kiss My Asana is going to support and grow, right? And one of the things that is so powerful about about our adaptive yoga community is that we all know that each of us can't know the other person's pain, but we get it. We understand not the particular pain that's happening or struggle with trauma, loss, and disability, but we all know our own, and it goes unjudged. It's allowed to come home and to land. The idea, some of you, when you live with trauma, loss, and disability, and you try to explain it to your community or try to explain it even to your family, right? It never comes off right. And it never seems like they can fully take it in. The rest of the world doesn't quite get what the internal issue is. That's so beautifully captured in the line, "Oh my goodness, the waitress thinks I'm real," right? And that's also a sensation that I'm hoping and I know occurs in our adaptive yoga community and in our classes in the work of Mind Body Solutions. Yeah, it turns out that our experience is real. And in fact, it's not just real. The experience of living with trauma, loss, and disability is actually universal. It's everybody's story. So if you're joining us today, and you don't live with, quote, overt trauma, loss, and disability, your life has it in it too. I love the two-feathered turkey story because there's a beautiful innocence in the little girl that, and this is a big struggle when you live with trauma, loss, disability. You try to fit back into the world, and at first you think you have to fit into the world as, quote, the rest of our culture is. And when you live with trauma, loss, disability, you never can go back to that world exactly. You never quite fit in. And so the idea that her naive strength is to reshape the world in terms of the two-fingered turkey, man, it captures everything. The innocence that happens when you truly come home to go forward into your life. Another profound insight of what we're trying to do. And then, of course, finally, the story of the difference where he's, quote, got the bad news. He's never going to work at the Guthrie Theater, and yet he's going to be in theater the whole time. Let's just switch that to, I'm never going to have the body I used to have or the body I could have had if you're born with trauma, loss, disability. But you get to have the life you have and live into it instead of trying to retrieve who you were or you should have been. You get to be who you are and propel forward into your future. There it is. That's what we try to do, right? That it's there. So I'm so grateful for other people's stories and for other storytellers and for other people's experience. So with no further ado, I want to go forward and bring in a couple of different, three stories today before we all practice together. And of just different little snapshots of the impact of Mind Body Solutions. What's so hopeful about Mind Body Solutions and this launch into our week of practicing with purpose and raising money for Mind Body Solutions is that, yeah, our experience is hard, and in finding each other and being recognized, as Kevin said, is essential. But this is an overwhelmingly victorious story, right? Our stories are not an overcoming story. You don't overcome trauma, loss, and disability. You move forward and grow into a different version of yourself. And from there, we change the world. So as you're raising money and awareness for Mind Body Solutions this week, that's the story, right? that it's what you all do with what's coming forward. So with no further ado, I want to bring in Karen Vizak, right? Karen, so there have been multiple, hey, welcome, Karen. Thanks so much for joining us. I gave her like 2 days notice, by the way, to do this. So, but she knows, she's used to being put on the spot by me. So Karen, thanks so much for being here.
I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, so I want to tell you a quick little story about Karen. So she comes to a training, was it 2011, 2010?
2011.
2011, and she's a PT. She's coming as a PT, and by that time, I've been training healthcare professionals, and often healthcare professionals. She's a PT. She's coming in there to learn techniques to bring with her patients, to apply with their patients, and this is such a remarkable story. So there've been iterations of mind body systems where we spent more time training healthcare professionals and trying to transform the delivery of healthcare to include mind body principles. So Karen's one of those students in a workshop that quietly works incredibly hard, doesn't ask a lot of questions, and then goes and changes the world. Right. So I brought her to bring on the things that she's achieving now, 13 years later, are the things that Mind Body Solutions is about planting seeds to help people propel forward into their future. And it's been, and to watch what happens is because of all of you, right? So Karen, so you come to the training and you're at first thinking, I'm going to figure out some things to apply to patients. So how did that change?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I had just finished my yoga teacher training when I came out for my first training. Another yoga teacher told me about your book, Waking, and I read that and I just knew I had to go out and train with you. And it's funny, Kevin, talking about coming home because that's how I felt when I first came there. Like, this is definitely where I'm supposed to be, and this has kind of been waiting for me. And but still, everything for me was, how can I apply this to my patients? And I didn't really think it applied to me because I hadn't really experienced overt trauma, loss, or disability. So I was thinking this will be perfect for this person or this person, and I loved it all. But I knew you kept saying you have to experience it before you can teach it, and I definitely had some aha moments while I was there. But it was still all about, I can't wait to take this back to them. Um, do you want me to go into my whole when I became director and everything? Or?
Well, but so what happens is you start to realize that in fact it applies to you before it applied to your patients, right? So did that take a long time to?
Yes.
So you're practicing, and then what happens is Karen goes from a therapeutic PT, she goes into a management role, and then quickly explain the transformation of your perspective from patients to dot dot dot.
Right. So beginning in 2014, I was abruptly transitioned into a director role. So the hospital I worked at, suddenly I was managing physical occupational speech therapy, inpatient and outpatient, 40 people that I needed to manage. And I had no managerial experience. And these were all like my friends and colleagues that suddenly I was telling what to do. And it was because the person before me had been fired. So our COO, which I mentioned because he'll be important in this story later, he became my boss. And really, it's not like I had to take the role, but there was definitely a lot of pressure for an expectation for me to take the role. And what was interesting is I was really kind of shocked by it, and nobody else thought that. Like, everybody else saw me as a leader. And so the self-awareness was definitely lacking at that point too. But it was a really stressful time for me. And that's when I started realizing, well, actually, I remember talking to you and you saying it sounded like I was grieving over this shift. And I thought, well, that's a bit dramatic. But then as I thought about it, it really was kind of a grief process for me to going from treating patients to suddenly thrust into this new role where I felt very ill-equipped. And that's when I started really realizing that, oh, I can apply these principles and they do make a difference in my life as well. So I think that was really the turning point for me.
And then you started to want to bring it to your colleagues, right? Right. And trying to realize that the principles you learned for adaptive yoga for patients and for students actually applied to caregivers equally, which is one of the profound insights that we tried to do in that healthcare training, was to make you realize what's good for the goose is good for the gander, right? What's good for the patient is good for the caregiver. So you ended this role. Now this is where I got to start tooting Karen's horn, which she's never comfortable with. But so she starts, she gets into this role and she calls me up and says, I'd like to bring you out here to Platte Valley Medical Center, and I want you to start training people. And she figures out how to raise money, and she's got the ear of the COO, who, thank goodness, was actually a nurse in his previous iteration before he became the COO of the place. And so he's already gets the importance of caregiver burnout, but also the care that's needed for patients. And so she starts to slowly transform and starts to get Platte Valley Medical Center to start integrating mind-body principles. She raises money from the foundation, and then flash forward a couple years, we're talking years now. We're not just talking like the slow, steady pace wins the race, just like a yoga practice, right? And then all of a sudden, she's getting to now where she realizes the way with the language she needs, Karen, is the language she needs to go to convince an institution now, not just an individual to practice mind body stuff, but an institution. And she starts to develop her own role. So like you got kind of, you wanted to change your role, work differently. And can you explain the role you're in now? Like, which she authored, which, by the way, is a model. She's being called upon by other health organizations around the country to talk about the role that she created for herself in the institution. So talk a little bit about what you started to transform to.
Yeah, so the director thing went well, and then there was COVID, and I realized like how burned out we all were, including me. But I think especially for leaders, it was very challenging because you were not only trying to figure out what was best for the patients and taking care of yourself, but also taking care of all these other people. So I definitely experienced burnout and wanted something different. And to Platte Valley's credit, they realized how important it was to take care of our caregivers. And so we actually had a safety grant, and several of us did some training on compassion fatigue and moral distress and secondary trauma and that kind of thing. And so as toward the end of 2021, I realized like that was really what I wanted to do. I wanted to make this shift. So yeah, I pitched this idea to our senior leaders, and thankfully they were on board. And I think obviously the timing was right with the pandemic. People were realizing like we have to do something to take care of our caregivers. So
Let me pop in here now, but simultaneously she realizes, this is where I think, so Karen's like the student in the back of the room that works really hard, figures out everything that's being said and goes and applies it. So but at the same time, she's recognizing that she needs to get some sort of proof or study that actually shows the efficacy as an intervention of mind-body stuff. So it hits the language that doctors and the institution needs to hear. So simultaneously, you also develop a study for interventions, mind-body interventions for knee replacements, right?
Mhm.
Done by nurses. So talk a little bit about, so it's this quick little thing where they have just a few minutes before and a couple sessions after, and talk about the results of this quick mind-body intervention for people that were going through knee replacement.
So we kind of came up with this script using a lot of the mind body concepts, and it was like a 10-minute intervention. We called it intervention because that's what they
That's the language they need.
gotta
Yep.
use the language. You gotta fit into, you gotta know your audience. But so we would go in the day right after they had their surgery, and then the following day, and we'd measure their anxiety levels and their heart rate and their oxygen consumption, and then we would do this intervention and then remeasure everything, and actually had data to prove that doing this intervention lowered their anxiety levels and
By
physical.
70 points, right?
It was no, by 20 points. It
20
was-
point. I'm going to say 70. Let me lie.
70 sounds great.
But you
And-
also raise our oxygen levels too?
Yep, heart rate and oxygen level. So physiologically, we were seeing a difference as well, a calming effect. And one of the reasons I wanted to do it wasn't, I mean, obviously we wanted to help the patients, but also to show the nurses and the doctors that this stuff really works, because their brains need to see the data and the evidence to really buy into it.
So what's stunning about what you did, Karen, and you're not willing to take the credit all the way that you should, is that you realized your audience, you knew what it meant in your own case, and you figured out a way to get it into the language that they needed to hear, right? And then did the work, putting together a protocol and a study. By the way, if you haven't done it, it sucks, right?
I don't
It's
know.
horrible. Because I remember when you were trying to write conclusions and I was talking to you about it and trying to figure out stuff. It was like amazing. But she does it. She does what she needs. She gets the intervention. She gets their ear differently. She redefines her role. She becomes an advocate that floats around and teaches mind-body principles. And then just recently, this last year, she just called me we had a session just a couple weeks ago. You were asked to do a couple different things, right? You went to DC to present at a conference and you're having a paper published. So quickly tell us about that.
So the paper was for the research that we did. So got the Orthopedic Nursing Journal, we'll publish that. And then, yeah, the program that I developed in my new role is called Reset. It's an acronym for Resilience, Empathy, and Support for Employees and Teams. And we have this team, several of them who went through the training that are under me, and we work in different areas to improve well-being. So one of the areas is support and wellness, and that's where I kind of bring in a lot of the mind-body concepts. And so yeah, there was an international nursing conference in Washington, D.C., and I was selected to present on this model. So it's very exciting.
And gonna now, I'm hoping, be a highly compensated consultant helping people around the whole country actually take care of their employees. So this is one of those examples that, Karen, again, you don't fully let it in. I'm going to always make you feel self-conscious of it. What you've achieved is remarkable. Like, it's remarkable the way that you've had the vision and the patience to follow through on it. But this is the hope of Mind Body Solutions and now we've switched more to the end user, but all of you on the call, all of you doing this, as you step into your lives and go forward into your future, like Kevin said, after coming home, like even Karen describes the coming home of coming into the training and realizing this other level of connection. That's what we're for. So Karen, thanks so much. And I'm kind of emotional today. I can't say I'm proud. I'm awed by what you've done. And it honors Mind Body Solutions that you're out there doing this work one day at a time, right? So thanks so much, Karen. I'm so grateful.
One thing I want to add is it was just really funny when I was researching all this as I stepped into my new role. There was so much about burnout, and all the things that help were like gratitude and relationship and connection and compassion and all these things that I was like, Matthew was talking about these things a decade ago. So I'm glad to see like everybody's catching up. And
Yeah.
I feel
Well,
like that stuff is being interwoven with my career too. So it's very exciting.
and it's because you've become an amazing storyteller in the right way. So thanks so much, Karen. All right, we got to switch now. Honored, right? Amanda. Holy dang. Come on down. You've been selected on The Day Is Right. So Amanda is from the UK. You're gonna fall in love with their accent. It's one of those things that I'm a fool for a British accent for sure. So Amanda, to give kind of a brief thing, was a practicing physician, has been diagnosed. How old were you, Amanda? Thanks for being here, by the way. I'm sorry to jump right in. I'm excited. So yeah. So when were you have a form of muscular dystrophy, right? And were diagnosed how many years ago?
25 years ago.
and then it started to more accelerate, right? So it usually, I don't want to get in the details of this, but usually it's, you don't live forever, but you have a form of it that just slowly your muscles don't recover if you overuse them.
That's right. Yeah.
You're slowly losing some stuff. So I don't want to go into this whole different aspect of the story, but she ended up having to let go of her practice, her medical practice. Not a great story. It's one of the stories that happen to people with our living with disability. But in the last few years, what finally drove you to actually find Mind Body Solutions? You just were looking for what?
I found you by accident. I was looking for a new hobby, something that I could do that wouldn't be taken away. Because at the time, everything I tried to do, as the muscular dystrophy progressed, I felt it was something else that was being taken away. So I wanted to do something that I knew I could carry on doing, no matter how my MD progressed. But I also wanted to do something that was kind of good for me. So I
Only
Googled
kind of though, right? Only kind of.
kind of. Well, it's a little bit alien for me to do things that are good for me. I much prefer to do things that are naughty. So I Googled exercise for quadriplegics because I thought, well, that's what one day I'm going to become. And then I kind of went down this rabbit hole, as you do, on the computer. And I came across this chappie called Matthew Sanford who'd written a book. So I downloaded your book and read your book from beginning to end overnight. Then I had a little look about Mind Body Solutions, registered. Bethany and Molly held my hand, as they do. And 2 days later, I was in your classes. And I have never, ever looked back.
So that's about 2.5 years ago. So you found us when we went exclusively online, which is
Yep.
like one of the things. And so what we want to focus in on with Amanda is the transformation in her perception of something she had always dreaded, as she might be losing, quote, physical ability, which is a hoist being installed in your house, right? Because you could no longer transfer or stand up very well.
Yeah. And
Right?
I've always said from the minute of diagnosis, I'm not having a hoist. I actually said, and I can't believe I said this because I don't think it now, I'd rather be dead than hoisted.
So that gives you this is a very willful woman who's actually quite type A and likes to be perfect at everything, right? And this, so like, she's like, so the hoist is not going to happen. So you started practicing a couple 2.5 years ago. Right now, by the way, she's in a teacher training with the Warriors with these teacher training for becoming a yoga teacher, but she comes to our classes. So talk about, you finally did talk about the transformation of your perception of the hoist. Give us a little bit of that story.
It happened very slowly. I needed the hoist. I had a fall, a horrible fall, and dislocated my hip. And I knew I needed it. So with the support from everybody in our community, they really, really did help me. Except that, you know, nobody wants it. None of us want these things. So I had the hoist installed. I don't know if you remember, but I had a conversation with you because I couldn't even look at it. Didn't like it. And you said, hang in there. You won't even see it. And you don't have to use it yet. It's there. And then one day I woke up and I thought, if this hoist can get me off the floor when I fall and it all goes wrong, then it can get me on the floor. And then I suddenly thought, it's not a hoist, it's my zip wire. And that was it. So I now get in my chair, get the sling in, and no, it's not very attractive. And no, I don't look like a Wonder Woman, but inside I feel great. And I zip wire onto the floor every day. and I love it.
She practices
Absolutely.
yoga now on the floor. So, the transformation of the floor, when you live with the disability, you can't get up on your own. Falling on the floor is the very worst, most fearful place there is, because you're helpless once you're on the floor. So the transformation of the floor being the place of most intense fear to a place
Yeah.
of freedom.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally. And now the fact that I know that if my transfers go wrong and I get on the floor, I can get back up off the floor. The fear of transferring has gone. And we all know when we're living in these bodies that living in constant fear that something's going to go wrong and you're going to get stuck is exhausting. So I don't get quite as tired. That's a little fib because I do more now, but there we go.
Yeah, because she's overworking, practicing, trying to keep up with this teacher training. But also, like, for example, one of the more subtle things is now you're not as worried about being alone, right? When Clive, your partner, is not there, and it's not just this idea of sensation of freedom. The floor is the friend and not the foe. It's that you actually, like Kevin's saying, you're able to go forward into a future differently, because exactly the nemesis became the ally, right?
Exactly.
Which is, so the one thing I want to back up quickly about, coming to that realization, I'd like to take all the credit for everything, but I actually can't. It turns out that you're a pretty awesome person. I don't want to say that too often to you, because my God, we know the kind of head inflation you can have, right? However, it's been the community too. So Amanda has stepped into the community at a level, and I want to have you talk a little bit about the importance of it being no cost in order for you to take a full immersive dive into our community. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I think the no cost helps in two ways. The first way, if you're like me and are just a little bit cynical when you start something new, just a little bit cynical. There's so many people throughout our lives with disability. You must try this. You must try this. This is a miracle cure. This is going to help you, blah, blah, blah. Everybody's trying to sell something. Whereas Mind Body Solutions isn't that. It is, this is a place, this is yoga classes, come and try them. So there wasn't that fear that somebody's trying to rip me off, somebody's trying to take my pennies. And then on the other side, which is equally as important, to be blunt, I couldn't have afforded to come the amount of times that I come if I had to pay a class fee. And I would have had to budget what was most important, this or my yoga. And most of us don't put our needs first, because being disabled is flipping expensive, as you well know. So the fact that anybody can come, it really is. Absolutely any of us can come as many times as we like, no matter how we are financially. And then I know I said two things, but third thing is because sometimes people say, give what you can afford. And that's difficult then. And that puts a pressure on people to give perhaps more than they can afford. But then we can give through Kiss My Asana each year and give back.
You're choking me up, Holmes. So, like,
Good.
I'm best today, however, because that's what we're for, Kiss My Asana is exactly for this. The fact that we've had a lot of people say, well, if you give it away for free, it doesn't have the same value. But we actually understand our demographic, and the immersion into the entire community, not just into our classes, is so important. So to close out this, Amanda, so now Amanda's not only coming in, starting to go, transforming her view of the things that were the the boogie monster, right? Like the floor, the hoist, all this stuff. Now she's in a teacher training. She's working hard, but we're actually helping her process some of the, and helping. She's going to be a thought leader in this practice for this yoga school to help them realize how to make it more accessible to more people. So she's out there starting to do the work, but she's also stepped forward into a leadership role within our community. You're starting a once a month um, group. It's called Chat Amongst Ourselves. Can you talk just briefly about this group that just launched last month, where we had 20 people show up online for the first one, right? But talk a little bit about this group. So Amanda's becoming one of our storyteller thought leaders within Mind Body Solutions.
So it's a group of people with trauma, loss and disability, where they can be totally safe and we just chat about certain things. So last group, we were talking about how we found Mind Body Solutions, and it's just a place where we can practice finding our voice. Because when I first started at MBS, there's no way I could have done this, because I used to just cry because I was in that place. Next month, we're going to talk about the funny stories we have when we try and ask for help and it doesn't kind of go the way we want it to go. And it's not recorded, so there's no pressure. And it's just a place for us to practice getting our stories out so we can all come home and go forward. There we go.
It's awesome. And the other thing is that I'm not invited to ever come because yeah, this is great.
No,
yeah,
two reasons. Matthew Sanford talks too much and people might have to be on best behavior.
Exactly. And we don't want that. But the other thing that's at the DNA level of Mind Body Solutions, which it's amazing what you and Laura Hallis, who is another one of our students that's taking the lead on this group, is that you also don't want it just to be a place where you come and complain right? It's about moving forward into your life as opposed to just complaining about what's going on. And that's also a big part of it, correct?
Yeah. We don't want a support group. We want a going forward group.
Yeah. So Amanda, another reason why we yogathon, right, is because what's happening in this last year at Mind Body Solutions and the way the group is forming and the way we're creating a community that people with trauma, loss, disability actually want to belong to, right? That supports the experience of trauma, loss, disability without patronizing, without the implied implication that, oh, our life is so bad, but rather growing the other way, right? Growing towards the future. That's what we're trying to do. So thanks so much, Amanda. We're going to switch gears and, you can join Chat Amongst Ourselves. Everyone's welcome but me. So
correct.
It's a good thing. So the final story I want to bring in from our community is Jane Gould. Jane, she lives in the United States, but she's going to have another one of those seductive British accents that make me a mess, right? I love the way it rings. I don't know if it's because my relatives were from, way back, they were indentured farmers from England, right? So I don't know. Jane, welcome to Mind Body Solutions.
Hi, thank you.
So there's a lot of quick story with Jane here. So Jane, you were diagnosed with MS, was it 2001?
Yeah.
2001. And I'm going to kind of give a brief biographical summation of she at that point was studying when she was on a yoga disability and transformation about a year or two ago. So we'll have to go, you can go back and watch that if you want. But she at that time switched from being a martial artist to studying Reiki, studying yoga, because you were going to like new age yourself and never have MS come get you, right? And did it she lived in California at the time, is now back living in California after living in Minnesota for a while. But she did everything right. And the last like 3 or 4 years ago or 5 years ago, you started to have it start to come anyway. Right. And blamed yourself for a while because maybe you didn't do it right and say all the right mantras. Right.
Yeah.
And kind of went through a period where all of a sudden it was happening anyway. And I can honestly say, having you as a yoga student, she's had quite a yoga practice since 2001. She's a really, really good yogi, right? And clearly had quite a practice before I met her. But when you started getting more and more affected, you were worried you weren't going to be able to yoga anymore. So talk a little bit about the thing that you thought you had lost and your first attempts to take online adaptive yoga, not with Mind Body Solutions.
Okay, yeah. So my over about the last 7 years, my body went from being able to walk to using a cane and then crutches and then a scooter, and now I'm paralyzed. And so during those 7 years, I tried to find a yoga practice that I could embrace and love. So I went online and tried different chair yoga, and all it did was make me cry, because even though I was sitting down, the practice was for me, it was like a standing practice, but just done in a chair. And I couldn't do it. So I couldn't move my legs apart how the instructor was showing me to do for Warrior 2, or I couldn't balance the way I was supposed to be balanced on the chair for the different poses. And so I just got more and more upset as time went by. And so I stopped practicing, because my practice just became me becoming really frustrated and sad. And I got to the point, even though I loved yoga so much, I got to the point of just believing that there wasn't yoga and I couldn't do yoga anymore. So I just put it to one side. So after having been a very dedicated yogi, I just, yeah, truly thought that yoga was just something that I just couldn't access anymore. So I quit.
So you come to class and what happens? All of a sudden, describe a little bit about what it was to come home back to your yoga practice in our classes.
Yeah. So I heard about somewhat a physical therapist told me about Mind Body Solutions, and I dipped into it very slowly and very tentatively by watching some videos from the Mind Body Solutions online video library and listening to some of Matthew's.
No cost, by the way.
Pardon?
It's a no cost library, right?
And yeah, a huge no cost library.
So before we go back into this, and then for you, well, no, keep going for it. I'll dive back into this for a second.
Okay. And so then I came to Matthew's class and loved it. But I kept my camera off and I didn't join in the conversation afterwards. And then a few weeks later, after I'd gotten a bit more comfortable and realized that there was something to this, and it was the real, in my mind, I don't like to say this because it sounds a bit weird, but like the real deal, like it was proper yoga. And then Matthew taught shoulder stand. And
Which is an inversion, by the way, for those you don't, you go upside down.
Yeah. So shoulder stand is literally you're doing like a handstand, but your shoulders are on the floor and your head's forward, right? So your body is completely lifted with your feet up towards the sky, right? And so he taught this pose. I'm sitting in my wheelchair with my elbows on the table in front of me and my head just looking down. But the way he taught it, my whole body experienced being in shoulder stand, which had been my favorite pose when I was practicing yoga regularly. And I came out of that pose and just started had tears streaming down my face, which I think Matthew must have seen. And then I was just like, oh my gosh, I want to know what happened and how he did that. And that just brought me home.
Yeah, yeah, yep. Careful, we're both gonna start getting weepy. Um, so the other thing that happened is that you didn't just come to my class and talk about the importance even for you, because the thing is most of our demographic is on a fixed income, right? And so like you were able to not just come to my class, you're able to
Yeah.
do way more classes. Talk about a little bit about that importance.
Well, the thing for me was that I'm on disability, Social Security, on a very low fixed income. And something that Amanda had said, if I had to, if Mind Body Solutions was a paid for organization, I would have budgeted for one class a week, because that's all, like, realistically, honestly, I can afford. And even then, I probably would have felt a little bit guilty about it and would probably have tried to just teach myself through the online library, which would have been great, but not at all what it was. But so what I did, because it was accessible and free, I basically scheduled my time so that I could come to as many classes as I could a week. And so I was doing 4 classes a week. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, dipping in and out of meditation on Friday. And then the other beautiful thing about that was that at the time, because I could no longer work, I could no longer drive, and my world had become very, very, very narrow and very small. I was very down and in a very dark place, which consisted of several days in a row being in bed and just not getting out of bed. And now I'm going to get teary. What Mind Body Solutions did was it gave me a schedule, because I knew I had to get out out of bed every day to get to Bethany's class or get to Molly's class, so it gave me a reason to get up out of bed. And then, especially as I came more often and I began building relationships with other people in the class, and I knew that so would wonder where I've been if I hadn't shown up for a whole week. So it really transformed so many aspects of my life.
So in closing, because we have to practice, because that's part of the whole point here, and both Amanda and Jane will be on screen along with one of our teachers, Chris Paul. Um, but you went from not thinking you could do yoga anymore to being able to do yoga, being able to create a schedule, being able to come out of the dark place, right? To now, you like wrote us not that long ago and said, what do you think if I teach a class for Mind Body Solutions, right? Which we have offered to pay her for, but we can't because she'll lose her support from disability. So she's a volunteer teacher, right? But like, so now you're teaching and have a class on Sundays, right? So look back, look now and go, try to describe a little bit of your incredulity about, because now you get to help others, right?
Yeah, so I suggest I wrote to Matthew a couple of months ago, and was like, hey, you don't have a class on Sundays. Like, I don't know, something I just got is like, and plus, there's been a few conversations about me teaching again. Everything aligned in my mind.
By the way, the world's a better place because you're teaching again. Saw that early on. Molly and Bethany all saw it early on. The world's better because you're teaching, but go on.
So I just started teaching. I've taught 3 Sunday morning classes now, and I just love it. Like I love it so much, so much. And I'm realizing that now, like I have a place back in the world and I'm helping people. And while I'm watching my students on screen doing the pose and I'm seeing what I can suggest and offer, it just makes me feel so happy to be giving back. And it's just fantastic. I have no words, Matthew, except that I love it so much. And I never thought, I mean, I thought I had lost yoga forever, and I thought it was something I could not do. And now I'm teaching it again. It just looks different because I'm teaching it with this body in a wheelchair.
Of course, I'm biased. I think you're teaching more at the heart of yoga than you were ever able to before. But that's my bias and the bias of Mind Body Solutions. And it's not because you're not, I mean, people think, oh yeah, no matter what you teach or whatever, as a student, no matter what you do, you're doing yoga and it's beautiful. No, Jane is a hell of a yoga practitioner and a hell of a teacher because she does the work, she's empathetic, she sees her students, and she shares her insight. All right, everybody, we got to practice, but you just got a quick snapshots of why we yogathon and why we do what we do. And we're so grateful. We're so grateful that you're willing to help us raise awareness and money for Mind Body Solutions. And I really am so struck that Mind Body Solutions works because of all of you, right? Whoever's on the call, whoever's raising money, but also because it's our stories coming into the world, raising the voice of trauma, loss, and disability. So one of the things I was thinking about what I wanted to teach, so everyone sit up straight and tall, is this sense of belonging and this idea from Kevin about things, you know, landing in who he is. And one of the lines we often say at Mind Body Solutions is, your body's the best home your mind will ever have, right? And so that's one of those truths that is in our DNA. And it's not just a psychological insight. We want our students to support their experience of living with trauma, loss, and disability from body to mind. But the world trains us to think that something's not just people with trauma, loss, and disability, but everyone, to think that your body is an object to act upon rather than to ground and live through. Right? And this fundamental insight is violent. The meme that we get, right? The overcoming meme that all of us live with, right? And it's, so the idea of this class is, how do you belong in the space that your body occupies? Before you have to relate it to the world, how do you move? How do you breathe? So sit up straight and tall. Turns out that the midline of your being, well, the sum total of all that you are, happens at the midline in its most pure form. Turns out that your spine and your spinal cord is actually in your midline. So your bones tend to be in the midline of every space they're in too. So part of the core of, and by the way, Chris Paul's on the call with us now, who's be able to get up and walk around. She also lives with a body that's difficult, but she's going to be able to show some of the standing things here. So this idea of letting your midline and your spine, I've never taught a student that doesn't have a spine. It's the center of your life force, and we tend to only pay attention to our spines and when they hurt. This is a profound mistake of human minds. So feel your feet on the floor, your sitting bones in the chair. If you're on the floor, sit up on the floor. Create the foundation so your midline can start to be more aware of moving in multiple directions. So hit your sitting bone down. Hit sitting bones down, lift your lower abdominal slightly up. As that starts to lift up, lift your chest. But if you've been practicing long enough, you'll know that hitting your sitting bone down and laying your lower abdomen up, you hit abdomen up through your chest, actually extends awareness down through your feet. This is Tadasana. So Chris, will you stand up and just stand in Tadasana? It just looks like she's standing up, right? But the standing version of Tadasana, it's called mountain pose, right? We're trying, which she's pressing down through her inner heels. She's taking her sitting bone, her tailbone forward, top of her thighs back, trying to grow like a mountain and have the rib cage expand. We're trying to do the same thing. Like, this is a huge breakthrough for me. It helps me feel my legs. When I hit down with my sitting bones and lift my lower abdomen up, drop my shoulder blades down and extend up through my spine and hit down through my inner groin to my inner knee to my inner heel, I start to embody my whole body. This is my birthright. Presence within your body, nobody can take. You can surrender it because of things that have happened in your life. I get that. That's what it is to be traumatized, right? But to actually live from inside to out. Now drop your chest and let the world go, right? And just feel how there's nothing wrong with this posture, except you're not as connected to the space around you. The only way to truly inhabit the space inside your body is to be more connected to what's outside of you. It's a paradox. So again, sit up. So you can have a seat back on the floor, Chris. So like have a hit down through your sitting bones, lift up through your chest. Now I'm going to ask you to do not only the vertical extension, but a horizontal extension. So feel each foot, feel each sitting bone, right? Broaden slightly across your sacrum, spread the space between your shoulder blades, balance your head over your neck, go down through your energy does not end at the terminus of your body. Go down through the floor, extend above, extend beyond the top of your head, become part of the space around you. Stay sturdy and alert. Honor the universe by being alert. Don't overwork. Don't be violent. Be congruent. Be full and congruent. If you can, bring your hands into prayer. Doesn't matter if you can't, right? But find your midline again. Draw a line down your nose, right down through your midline. Let your hands be a manifestation of the inside of your chest. Feel down with your sitting bones. Equalize the pressure between your hands. Keep spreading between the shoulder blades, broadening across your palms. Feel to the outer edges of your being from the midline. Honor the space around you and let it in. Don't just push your poses. Let the space into you. It's here to support you. You're coming home. Good. And then release. So it doesn't all have to be so serious. That's one of my weaknesses as a teacher, right? I'm pretty damn serious. So start to move around a little bit. Don't forget that there's lightness and rhythm and jiggle that needs to be part of your pose. So as you focus it through asana, you're bringing all of you. So this lightness, right, that I'm feeling and bouncing a little bit and remembering that my mind doesn't have to grip. In order for things to feel more real for the mind, it tends to narrow the world with the will. You got to learn how not to narrow the world with your will in an asana, right? So I'm getting this lighter thing, right? And I'm going to come back into the midline. I'm going to keep the lightness with me. Space in your low back really matters, right? So Chris, will you do a traditional dog pose on your mat? We're all going to do something like this. So there's multiple ways to do this. You're going to see Amanda put her wrists hopefully on her knees or her hands on her knees. Like, so I'm going to do it back here a little bit, like this, right? You could go onto a table here, but what we're looking for is lengthen your low back. So if Amanda's doing it here, so Chris is doing it there. Hey, Chris, come up on the balls of your feet for God's sakes. Raise your tailbone up towards the ceiling for crying out loud. There, she's got to be a tall steeple, right? All right. And so here, Amanda, she's hitting down, pressing into her thighs, lifting her chest up, hitting down through sitting bones, looking down, extending energy towards the sky. Chris's energy is going down towards the floor, right? But and work the undersides of your arms, Amanda. Underside of your arms, lift the sternum broad between the shoulder blades. So as Jane is forward, she's lengthening her back. She's dropping her shoulder blades and spreading them. We're all doing versions of the same pose. Breathe. And be aware of your hands and feet simultaneously, because that's what Chris is doing, right? Her points of contact with the earth are her hands and feet. And the apex at the top of her tailbone is reaching to the sky, right? We're all doing versions of it. We just happen to be, some of us are inverted. Good. And then release. That's, come on down, that space, the feel, and that kind of rush of like, whoa, I was like working hard. And you can't help it when you come to the end points of your pose, you tend to grip experience and freeze the world. That means you're not doing great asana. That means you're gonna fatigue faster, but your mind has to have its day, right? It has to pretend it's achieving, right? That's okay. It's okay that your poses kind of suck. So do mine. All the time, right? So I'm spreading my legs. So take, even if you can't do it, Amanda, I want you to move your knees apart from each other, right? So I'm changing the base. I'm changing the weight on my sitting bones, right? So, Chris, you can sit in Upavista Konasana with your legs wide, right? So I'm just getting this idea, and I'm trying to do some rhythm here. So I'm pushing on my thighs, right? Outward. And, coming forward and getting my spine to be an expression of rhythm, right? So I'm pushing out on my knees. I'm being aware of a triangle from my tailbone to each knee. And I'm lifting my chest and I'm coming forward, right? I'm changing gravity. So now I'm going to add more. Remember, my body's already got all these points in space. My mind doesn't receive them because my brain knows my mind can be overwhelmed, right? So my brain limits what comes through to my mind. So now I'm going to go, wait, I'm a yogi. And not only am I going to shift gravity and come forward and feel this triangle, I'm going to now add my heels as part of the triangle. My heels, my knees, my shifting on the sitting bones, my lift of my chest, right? And I'm going to come forward, but now I've got more points. So if my mind can start receiving where my body already is, I can start coming home to my body and go back and forth, right? So now we're going to lean over a little bit and again, change gravity again, push down. I'm pushing down here. I'm pushing down here. I'm lifting my spine up, but paradox is always necessary as I lift to reveal the metaphysic. As I lift my spine up, I'm hitting down through my sitting bones, right? So what I've done, and this is the genius of asana, is I'm introducing variation in body movement, but I'm keeping the same underlying sensation. Change without change. Prana, the life force that's here, the force that runs through the empty space too, doesn't care what position my body is. And as a practitioner, I'm trying to see that underlying truth. I'm trying to let my body position be different. And I'm realizing both truths, that there's variation here and it's still the same. So I'm hitting down here, lifting my spinal energy from my midline up. As it does that, I feel the release down. The release down is going to be how I'm going to press through the outer rim of the back heel, right? Because I'm going to lift up here and feel the prana, become more aware of it moving down through my body, because space is being made in my spine. What? Could all this really be going on? So I'm thinking on the call here, right? So Chris, will you stand up for a second? So on the people on the call, you can just nod, and if you disagree, that's okay. But does anyone, when you did that, do you not feel your legs better? Do you feel your legs better when you do the lift up, right? There's a subtle sensation in the human nervous system that's always there that your mind doesn't know how to listen to. Asana shows you how to have it. This is part of coming home. This is occupying the space that you're actually in. So Chris, just for a second, jump or step your feet wide. We're going to do triangle pose. Trikonasana. We're going to watch the full version of the pose. So turn your right foot in, left foot out if you got the block over there. Yeah. Whichever way you're doing it. Oh yeah, you're backwards. Okay, so I'm backwards. All right. So now take your arms wide. So I could spend time working on Chris's pose here, but I'm not gonna. She's gonna show the outline of the pose. Inhale, but reach out long. So keep your spine long as you reached out and down. That keeps awareness in her legs. As she reaches out long rather than collapsing, that keeps awareness in the back heel, just like what we were doing. Now, if she rotates her belly up towards the ceiling, tucks the bottom edge of her shoulder blade, aligns the shoulders from top to bottom. As she gets that alignment better, and now extends from the tailbone through the center of her chest, through the top of her head, she'll feel her legs more. It's the same pose, even though she's staying. Then come on up. So everyone else is now going to do a version of triangle pose, right? So you're going to take your legs wide again if you can. And even if you can't, Amanda or Jane, just move your knees out so you get this feeling of expansion. Keep that imprint of energetic memory as you come off to the side. So I'm going to lean over to my right. We're going to do the same thing as we did over here. I'm going to go over, right? Now, if I drop my chest, I disconnect from the space around me, and the empty space in the room is no longer my ally. If I drop my chest, turns out this is in every pose, right? So I'm opening my chest, I'm hitting down to the earth, I'm extending my spine upward, and I take my arm wide. Now, if you can't take your arm wide, don't worry about it. You can do the same thing by broadening from here, lengthening this way, and opening up, right? So I'm hitting down, I'm extending my spine. If you can do this, great, right? Doesn't matter, but keep the earth, keep the sky, and keep filling the vessel. Doesn't matter. This is just icing, right? And then release. Come back to center. Now we're going to go this way. Remember, it's your birthright to live, not just in the part of your body that you can control through muscular action. It's your birthright to have the empty space in your body too. We just don't know how to activate it without something like asana. So I'm coming over this way again, and I'm trying to get the earth in the pose, the sky in the pose, the space in the pose, my will, but not that I'm like going to sacrifice too much to use my will. Take my arm up. Doesn't matter if I can't take my arm up if the midline is expressing the pose. This is just ice cream or cherry, right? So if I drop it, I lose connection to the space around me. The space in the room is your ally, and without the empty space in the room, you can't realize the empty space in your body. It's not just about what you can control. It's about how much you can feel. Good, and then release. Come back to center. Stand back into Tadasana, Chris, right? One of the things that we try, a more able-bodied, whatever that means, practitioner actually gets tricked into the illusion that their poses consist on what they can control. It's so not true. The realization is to help the spaces they can't control integrate with the spaces they can. So Amanda's got muscles that don't regenerate as well if she overuses them. So if she takes the old version of herself and just works really hard like she would have before all this happened, she's going to make her symptoms of muscular dystrophy worse. She needs to trust the poses happening, not just mentally. She needs to be able to sense the poses without overusing her muscles. Guess what? Every yoga practitioner has to learn that. Every single one, especially as you age, right? So sit in Tadasana. And the good thing as you age, hopefully you don't think you have to prove as much. That's part of the freedom, right? So inhale and take your arms straight up in the air. Or not, whatever arm you can do. See, Amanda's figured it out, right? Drop your shoulder blade, everybody. Raise up through your spine. Inhale on an exhalation. Come over. So do Marichasana 3, Chris, on the ground, right? All right, so we're gonna focus on the midline here, right? So instead of thinking, oh, I gotta crank and win, that's my will. I want to auger towards the earth with my spine. I want to rise towards the sky with the center of my chest. I want to drop my shoulder blades, broaden the space between your shoulder blades, right? Auger down, rise up, and bring the whole world with you as you twist. Twist with the space around you. You're creating like a vortex, a swirl in the empty space. Good, and then release. Because your body is miraculous. Inhale up, both directions. Exhale, revolve, change gravity. Refine your balance, right? Because without balance, you're doing violence, right? So you got to find whatever version of sensation of balance you can. Hit down, rise up, inhale, lift up under the collarbones, broaden between the shoulder blades, auger down towards the earth, raise skyward through your core. Inhale, add the breath, exhale, revolve. Bring the whole world with you because it's your ally. You don't get to control the whole world. Good, and then come on back to center. You get to bring it with you, though, right? Because the world's actually benevolent. People in the world may not be benevolent, but the space that's here is, right? Before anyone occupies it. That's how you're connected to the world. Bring your hands around in front of you, do a version of dog pose again. Look for that little bit of space in your low back, that little bit of extra space down with the sitting bones up. Look for that little bit of space that makes you glad you're alive. The little spaces reveal the universe. The big spaces scare the mind. The little spaces reveal. Find a little space in your spine. Connect it to a little space in the center of your chest. Connect it to a little space in the center of each palm. Connect it to a little space in the bottom of each foot. Breathe to touch all the spaces. They were waiting for you. And then drop your spine and go, dang, I have to leave this? Yeah, it's okay. You drop your spine, you leave it a little bit, right? That's okay. I'm going to go back and forward a little bit. So come forward. I want everyone to come forward and put your forearms on your thighs. So Chris, do upward facing dog or get on your stomach, and we're going to do a quick little version of upward facing dog, right? So I'm coming forward. Of course, I'm going long, right? Because the interviews were so damn good, but I believe in the yoga practice too, right? So I want you to, I'm actually touching my hands between here, right? I'm going down, I'm coming forward, but I'm lifting my sternum up. So I'm not reaching with my eyeballs, I'm reaching with the center of my chest as I hit through the sitting bones, broaden across the collarbones, right? Hit down. So Chris has got energy going down to the tops of her feet. Amanda and Jane have to continue their sitting bones down to the ground. broaden across the collarbones. Now, if you want to look up, right, open your eyes and extend and lengthen the front of the neck. You can add that to the pose if you want. Good, and then release. Whew. And now you're going to go back and you're going to do another kind of back bend, but you're going to go back over the top of your chair. So, Chris, do Dhanurasana, but don't do the whole pose, but lay on your stomach and grab your ankles behind you, right? So we're gonna like put length on our femur bones, make the space happen between the lower abdomen and the legs, have energy go this way so you can open this way, hit the back of your chair and go up and over the back of your chair. Your body and then come on back. Your body belongs in yoga, right? The principles of yoga don't discriminate. So I'm gonna have you do a gentle. Yoga poses do. If you limit and then come on, if you limit a pose to the traditional version of the pose, you've lost the heart of yoga. If you don't think there can be rigor in poses, even though I can't do the whole traditional pose, you've lost yoga. There needs to be rigor. So very gently, inhale, lift up, exhale, revolve. We're twisting a little bit. Just to remember and bring the whole universe with you. The intensity of yoga can happen through every body. The intensity of asana. Then come on back to center. Right? You just have to find the little spaces that are better at revealing the infinity. And you don't get to control the infinity. You get to become part of it. And you get to practice it. Inhale, lift up, exhale, as you go on to the second side. Right? You get to practice congruence. Just remember to include your body and then release and come forward. Just remember, it's so hard because you get so many of these messages. It's like, oh, my body's a vehicle for me to act upon. Then come forward and just lengthen your back. No, it's not just a body to act upon. Right? It's a vehicle of realization. It can teach you things that your mind can never know alone. Do you know what the sensation of support feels like? Can you let your body teach your mind the depth of the sensation of support? Oh my God, your mind's not in charge. Your body's solved the problem of living. Your mind is the ungrounded one. It's full of possibilities, though. But without the body to live into those possibilities, you got nothing. Come on back to center. Your body is the vehicle of expression. So before we head off into a Shavasana, right? Please spread the word of Mind Body Solutions. Please, I hope you've gotten a glimpse into the kind of work we're doing. The core of our adaptive yoga community knows that anybody, everybody can profit from the little story that's emerging out of Mind Body Solutions. We want to get it to more people living with trauma, loss, and disability. And you're the stories, everyone on the call, everyone raising money, raising awareness. It's your stories, like Karen's, like Jane's, like Amanda's. It's and Kevin's. It's your stories that are changing the world. Your application of what you think's going on here. So grateful. So grateful for all of you. So now release your energy into the chair, into the floor. Chris, why don't you lay flat, right? Because then you have more contact, right, with the floor, and you can surrender more to gravity. We can only have time for a long shavasana, one of my weaknesses of a teacher, right? Soften the inside of your mouth, your jaw. Let in the fact that all that surrounds you is holding you up. Your mind doesn't see the world like that. Your mind sees obstacles, and that's its superpower. It's a limited superpower. You must let in the nourishment of existence, the paradox of existence. It's both empty and full. Touch this place. Surround this place. It's your greatest ally. It wants to help you. It wants you to live your story. Start to bring yourself back. Soft, little deeper inhalation, little longer exhalation. Thank your body. Your mind is beautiful, but it's full of folly. Thank your body again. When you're ready, open your eyes. If it's too much, close them again. There's an insight growing in Mind Body Solutions in our adaptive yoga community. It matters. It matters. And it's because all of you. So thanks for allowing me. I'm 20 minutes late. No one surprises by me going tardy long, right? Bring your hands together. Stay in your own midline. It's beautiful there. It's whether your mind can believe it. You don't have to make it beautiful. Namaste. Spirit in me bows the spirit in you. So excited you're helping us for the rest of the year by doing what you're doing. Right? So with that, you're gonna get audio files and different websites. Each day of the week, one of our students leads a practice. Everyone's invited to it, right? And they're at 1 o'clock Central Time, unless I'm wrong, right? You're gonna get, I'm gonna read you little excerpts from the book I'm writing right now and little how it applies to Mind Body Solutions. Just don't forget, as you're practicing with purpose this week, raising money and awareness for my MBS, you're not alone. You're practicing with others. You belong. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of the day. Have a wonderful week. And we'll keep on keeping on at Mind Body Solutions. All right, everybody. Peace.